Better thinking, faster decisions, bigger ROI. This is the Finding 12 Minutes podcast. The idea is simple. If you can find 12 minutes of efficiency in your day, you will gain an hour every week, and that changes how we work. Each episode is focused on practical ways to use AI, technology, and smarter strategies to help you move faster, think clearer, and get more done with less effort. So let's find your 12 minutes.
So most product teams are not actually building products. The reality is that most are just managing conversations. A customer asks for a new dashboard, sales wants a new integration to close a deal, operations needs another approval step added to a process or a flow. An executive sees something in a competitor's platform and asks, why don't we have it? Each request sounds reasonable. Many of them may even be good ideas, but a collection of good ideas is not a strategy. So let's explore, the practical ways to make better decisions. Let's work more efficiently when it comes to managing these conversations. And then how do we create that measurable value through AI, innovation, even smarter strategy? So today I want to kind of really dive into and talk about one of the most common problems in product management and technology development. Feature requests are not a strategy. And I think that is a really important topic for us to kind of dive into. While features do provide inputs into strategy, but that's a real clear distinction that matters because organizations often confuse listening to customers with following instructions from customers. And listening is essential, but blindly building features, products, enhancements on what people request is not. So I want to kind of talk about this feature request trap. When features are requested, they pretty much come from all over the organization. Could be customer service, could be executives, could be sales, could be customers. How does it work? Well, customers submit them. The sales teams promise that these features are going to be in the applications to make a sale. Executives suggest them. Competitors inspire them. Internal teams create them to solve their own workflow problems. But before long, the product roadmap becomes a list of requests organized by urgency, organized by political influence, and who has complained the most recently. And it's usually a customer. Maybe it's sales. The loudest customer is going to move to the front. The largest potential deal moves to the front. Executives, their requests move to the front. Everything moves to the front. The feature that your competitor launched last week moves to the front. And this creates the illusion of responsiveness. Everyone's busy, the backlog is full, and releases are happening. But that activity is not a strategy. Whenever every request becomes a priority, product becomes a collection of compromises. It becomes harder to use, harder to maintain, harder to explain. The team may be delivering features while weakening the product overall. And that feature factory is the problem, right? The goal quietly then starts shifting from creating customer value to completing tickets. Product managers become order takers, developers become fulfillment teams, and strategy becomes whatever happens next in the backlog. But a request is evidence and not an answer. The feature requested should be treated as evidence that someone is experiencing a problem. Is it necessarily evidence that the proposed feature is the right solution? It's a good question. Customers are usually good at explaining what is frustrating to them. They're not always best at designing the solution. So if you would imagine a customer asks for a custom reporting dashboard, the obvious response is to add the dashboard to the backlog. But the problem that they are having, does that dashboard actually solve it? Maybe an executive is asking for weekly project updates. Maybe a customer is manually combining information into 3 systems. Maybe the existing reports are technically accurate but too difficult to understand. Maybe the customer does not need another dashboard at all. Maybe they need an automated weekly summary or a better export or a simpler view of the information that already exists. The request should be treated as a starting point, not an end solution. The problem is that is the problem that you need to understand, right? So is it the issue that they're having? Is it just delivering on what the customer wants? Does that solve the problem? Or is there a different way to kind of look at it? And this is where techniques like the 5 whys become useful. Keep asking why until you move beyond the requested feature and identify the actual business problem. Why do you need a dashboard? Because leadership needs weekly updates. Why are the current reports not working? Because they contain too much detail. Why does that create a problem? Because someone needs to spend 2 hours on Friday translating that data into a presentation. Now the opportunity is clearer, right? The problem is not the absence of the dashboard. The problem is the time and effort required to communicate the project performance. That opens the door to several possible solutions, including ones that may be faster, simpler, and more valuable than the original request. So that kind of leads us into this concept of strategy requires choices. Strategy is not a list of everything that you could build. The strategy is a set of choices about what you will build, who you will build it for, what problems you solve, and what you will intentionally leave out. And that last part is the most important part, what you will intentionally leave out. And that last part matters the most. A roadmap without trade-offs is not strategy. It really is just a wish list. Real product strategy should answer several questions. Who is the primary customer? What problem are we solving? How does solving that particular problem support the business? What makes our approach different? How will we measure success? What are we choosing not to build? And those answers give the teams a filter. And without the filter, every request appears to be equally valid. With it, a team can evaluate whether the request supports the product's direction or distracts from it. This is also where that concept of blue ocean and red ocean thinking can help. Are you adding a feature because it creates unique value or because every competitor appears to have it? Competitive parity may sometimes be necessary, but copying competitors one feature at a time rarely produces a differentiated product. You may eventually build everything that your competitors have and still give your customers no clear reason to choose your product. Now let's kind of bring this back to this concept of artificial intelligence. AI just makes the problem bigger. Generative AI has made it easier to brainstorm, easier to prototype, easier to build MVPs and proof of concepts. And that is valuable, but it's also dangerous, right? Having too many options makes it very dangerous. When the cost of creating prototypes fall and the number of ideas increase, when development does become faster, people assume every idea should be pursued. AI is lowering the cost of building these applications and adding features. It does not eliminate the cost of choosing poorly, though. And this is where the human in the loop becomes very important. A feature can be built quickly and still create support cost, still create security risks, create technical debt, increase training needs, even create long-term maintenance obligations that you weren't anticipating. And that speed of AI can create pressure to skip strategic questions. And those questions could be as simple as, why do we need this? Who benefits? What changes if we do build it? What happens if we don't build it? How will we know if this actually works? How do we know if it actually added any value? These questions become more important as development starts to accelerate, not less important. Consider the number of organizations that say they need an AI chatbot. Chatbot's a feature. Okay, so what is the problem? Employees are unable to find internal information. Customers are waiting too long for support. Technical documents are difficult to search or find. Is the organization trying to reduce service costs? Each of those problems could lead to a different solution. The answer may be a chatbot, but it also may just be better search, cleaner data, maybe improving your documentation. I'm a big fan of workflow automation. Or does it really require a redesign of your customer support process? May not necessarily be the chatbot. So starting with the feature can lock you into the wrong answer before you even understand what the question is. So that kind of brings us into this whole concept of the feature request filter. A product team does not need a complicated governance process for every idea, but it does need a consistent filter. And the next time someone submits a feature request, maybe ask 6 questions. First, what problem are you trying to solve? It's a very, very valid question. Start with the problem, not the tool. I've said this multiple times. The second question, who else is experiencing this problem? So get outside of that person's bubble. A lot of people stay inside their bubble. It's only within customer service. It's only within sales. It's only within marketing. Okay, but who else within the organization is experiencing this problem? Third question, what evidence can you tell me or show me that the problem is actually very important? Validate it for me. Validate that there's an actual issue and it's not a personal preference or a personal want or a personal need. Fourth question, does solving it support the product and the business strategy? So looking at the overall goals of the organization, if we did this, does it lean into the goals and the strategies that we've set for ourselves for the year, for our 3-year plan, for our 5-year? The fifth question would be, what would need to be delayed, removed, or funding being removed to make room for this, right? We can't do everything. So if our table is full, what comes off the table? And that's a very hard conversation because sometimes that's not just a decision that or an answer that can come from one department. Sometimes that impacts multiple departments. And you're going to have to get buy-in, organizational buy-in. But you have to ask that question about what gets delayed, what gets removed, or what gets defunded to make room for what you're asking for. The sixth and final question is what is the smallest and fastest way to test this assumption? How fast can we get to a POC? How fast can we actually benchmark this thing to get to the assumption that it's actually solving what we need to do? These questions change the conversation. So instead of asking, when can we build it? The team should start asking, should we build it? And this is a strategic conversation. The trade-off question is especially important. Not every yes is also a no, right? So not every yes is also a no. So we can't say yes to everything, but we have to say no to something. So saying yes to one feature means saying no to another feature. It means postponing a reliability improvement, accepting more technical debt, or even redirecting people to a different priority. Features are not free simply because the technology makes them faster to produce. So if we tie this back to the whole concept of the 12-minute test or the finding 12 minutes, this is where finding the 12-minute concept can really help. Before adding a request to the roadmap, spend 12 minutes examining it. Use the first few minutes to define the underlying problem. Use the next few minutes to identify the customer, the value, and the evidence. Use the remaining time to consider, the strategic fit, what trade-offs, and the smallest possible experiment to validate what you're trying to do. You will not complete the full product analysis in 12 minutes, but that's not the objective. The objective is to interrupt the automatic movement from request to development. 12 minutes is structured thinking, right? So when you think about this, it's 12 minutes is all around how you structure your thinking, which can prevent weeks and months of unnecessary work. It can stop a team from creating something the customers won't use. It can expose a request that represents only one unusual customer rather than a broader market need. It could also identify valuable opportunity that deserves deeper investigation. The time saved does not come from building faster. It comes from avoiding the wrong work. So when you think about that, replacing the backlog growth with learning, right? The goal about product management should be to not maintain the largest backlog. A large backlog often means the organization has collected more requests and has made decisions. A healthier product process turns requests into learning. Group similar requests together, look for patterns, identify reoccurring problems beneath the proposed solutions, then test the problem before committing to the feature. Ultimately, you have to interview customers, you have to review your usage data, you have to create simple prototypes, and ultimately simulate the new workflow manually. You could use AI to help develop several solution concepts and run a limited pilot. So the cheapest useful test should come before the expensive permanent solutions. This approach protects innovation rather than slowing it down. It allows teams to experiment without committing an entire product to every idea. It also creates a better relationship with the customers. Instead of simply saying yes or no, the team can say, help us better understand what you're trying to accomplish. That question often produces better insight than the feature request itself. So saying no is just part of product leadership. One of the hardest responsibilities in product management is saying no. Sometimes the answer is not now. Sometimes the answer is not for this product. Sometimes the answer to the problem is real and the proposed solution is not the right one. A strategic no is not a failure to listen. It's evidence that the organization has clear direction. Customers don't need to have every request approved. They need confidence that the product team understands the problems and is making thoughtful decisions. Sales teams do not need unlimited customization. They need clarity about which customers and opportunities fit the product. Developers do not need endless backlog. They need context, priorities, and an understanding of the outcomes that they're trying to create. And then leadership does not need more features. It needs a product that produces measurable value. So wrapping up this latest episode, feature requests are valuable. They reveal friction, they expose unmet needs, they create opportunities of learning, but they're not a strategy. Strategy begins with when you interpret those requests, identify the underlying problems, and evaluate the evidence to make deliberate choices. The best product teams do not ask, how quickly can we build this? They first ask, is this the right problem to solve? AI can help us generate more ideas, develop more concepts, and build solutions faster than ever, but the speed without direction only helps us reach the wrong destination sooner. The next time a feature request arrives, do not immediately add it to the roadmap. Take 12 minutes, understand the problem, examine the evidence, consider the trade-offs, and then decide. Because good product strategy is not measured by how many requests you success, it's measured by the quality of the choices that you make.
And that's your 12 minutes. If you found value in this, share it with someone who needs to work smarter, not harder. And remember, small efficiencies compound. Find 12 minutes a day and the results take care of themselves. I'll see you in the next episode.